On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, it's Whatevs Wednesday with our dear pal, Katie Heindl, who is along today to talk about some big picture topics regarding your Toronto Raptors. Is OG Anunoby a star already? It's a little unorthodox, but I think he kind of might be. We're going to discuss that. We'll also talk about Scottie Barnes' struggles and the annoying conversation around him, and a whole bunch more coming up on today's episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks so much for being here.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? Welcome to episode number 1283 of Locked On Raptors for Wednesday, November the 16th. I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors for 9 seasons on all sorts of different platforms, and you can find me on Twitter, as always, at WoodleySean. There you can find the link to my Substack, which is called Post Touches, if you want to subscribe to that. I'm also on Twitter with the show, at Locked On Raptors. You can find the show for free on all your favorite podcast apps, too. You can subscribe, follow, rate, review, all that good stuff, and we are on YouTube. If you want to go hit the big red subscribe button, help support the show. It is so appreciated as we push towards 3,000 subs over on the tube. All right, on today's show, which is of course your first listen of the day, we are joined, as we always are on Wednesday, by Katie Heindl at Whatevs on Twitter, thus the Whatevs Wednesday moniker that everybody is talking about. It's ringing through the streets, Katie, when it's Wednesday. Bells are going off. It's Whatevs Wednesday. Dong, dong, dong. Hi. Well, welcome in, Katie. How's it going?
Good. That feels appropriate for the weather. It does feel very much like a Charles Dickens morning. So yeah, that's I heard some people clanging the bells for me this morning. It was nice. It's nice.
I'm glad it's just the rapturous sound of bells clinking throughout the streets for Katie. That's a world I want to live in, baby. All right, Katie. On today's show, we're going to dig into some bigger picture Raptors topics. We're going to start with OG. We'll talk about Scottie Barnes. We'll talk about some guys who are maybe making a name right now, kind of building on the thread I started yesterday when I was digging into just sort of the benefits, the weird silver linings of having none of your players available, because you have to try to spin it positively. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself crazy. We'll get to all that later, but we should start with OG Anunoby, Katie, who so far this season in 15 games, I believe him and Christian Koloko are the only players to have played all of the games for the Raptors at this point, which is kind of crazy. 17.3 points, 6.1 boards, just under 2 assists, 2.7 steals to lead the NBA, 1 block a game as well. He is shooting 36% on his threes. He is shooting overall 46%, which is, fine. And, he's had some wonky shooting nights. He's had some great shooting nights. It's all kind of been a weird mixed bag there. And the profile, Katie, so 17, 6, 2.5 steals. That's a very good player. I kind of maybe, Katie, am thinking that OG Anunoby is a star right now, and it's just like a different version of the star that we typically kind of associate with that word, where it's like, oh yeah, he's averaging 25 a game and he's kind of this offensive engine or whatever. It feels different, but just like eye test wise, when you watch a Raptors game, I don't know if there's a guy other than Pascal Siakam when he was healthy who's popped off the screen more than OG Anunoby has for the Raptors this year. So I ask you, Katie, is OG Anunoby a star?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this so much. I think his trajectory is so much different than any of his, I was going to say colleagues, teammates.
I like the idea of calling teammates colleagues. Yeah,
they're
that's
his
fun.
colleagues
It's professional.
Just because, as we've said, it's tough when you're on a team where everyone has taken these leaps and bounds progressions, and your progression has stayed more of a steady state, right? Incremental season over season. You're not going to look on paper like, oh, you've had this kind of explosive improvements, because what you're being compared against is also not normal. Right. Sure. It's not normal what we've seen of Pascal Siakam or Scottie Barnes, even Fred VanVleet, that's not the norm of the NBA. So I think when you compare to that, that's where he can kind of get lost a little bit in the shuffle of the conversation of, is he a star? Where does he kind of fit? And also, if you want to talk about all-star candidacy, all defensive, all that stuff. But I really think he is. And this version of OG that we're seeing is my favorite version of OG, and brings me back to memories of bubble OG Anunoby, who was sneaky, stealthy, weirdly scaring superstars like LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I remember because he has this ability to just like pop up in spots like right beside, like sneak up on people because he is so quiet and his game is kind of this demure, blink and you'll miss it sort of thing. But like recording 40 steals for this season so far.
Yeah.
Like that is a stat to just kind of, like open your eyes very widely as I just pantomimed at. And that is like the stat that I love because it means that we got sneaky, scary OG back.
Yeah. And it's another thing too, because the steals are so essential to what this team does in terms of its identity and like the way it butters its bread, which is get steals, run the other way, dunk on the other team, get back and play defense, get steal again.
So like disruptive.
He's so essential to the identity of the team bearing out night to night. And look, I'm not going to use this comparison more than once because it's not the same comparison. It's just the easy one to draw to be relatable. But Draymond Green does that stuff for the Warriors too, right? It's a different kind of thing. Obviously, the defense is unbelievable, probably even greater than what we see from OG because he's one of the best defenders we've ever seen. But he doesn't score at the level of a star. He doesn't shoot at the level of a star. He barely shoots at the level of me on a regular day. But he is so instrumental to making what the Warriors do work. You take him out of the mix, you can have Steph Curry and Klay Thompson all you want, and they'll win you plenty of games, but it's not going to look like the Warriors are supposed to look. And I think at this point, the Raptors are not going to look like the Raptors are supposed to look without OG Anunoby, who's just so freaking good at one-on-one defense, team defense, help defense at the rim. It doesn't even matter. He's just there in every single aspect, and it is amazing to behold. Do you have like a favorite thing that OG does right now, Katie? There's lots of different things that he'll kind of do over the course of a game, all the sort of idiosyncrasies of his play style. Is there something that kind of pops to mind where it's like, yep, that's the thing I tune in to watch OG do?
I mean, besides everything I already mentioned, which is kind of like that's what I tune in to watch him somehow get to the corner, like get to the pocket and like be wide open for a three and make that shot and have every one of his defenders and even some of his teammates be like, how to get over there. But I have to also say, like, it's been really thrilling to watch him be back on, just kind of being a bit of an offensive powerhouse and like cutting right down through the middle of the paint for dunks or like, not even right down the middle. He'll do it in these like circuitous kind of ways.
Yeah.
That don't really make sense, but he's just plowing through defenders. I think that's been really cool to watch again, because to me that translates to confidence, and the confidence of having the ball in his hand and being able to like get up close. And I think, he knows his bread and butter are those outside shots, but to also see him use his physicality and be able to go in again, I think also right now that's what the team needs, because when you're down so many guys, it doesn't hurt to be able to have someone on the floor to be able to do that, and also to be able to do that to make a statement in terms of the confidence of the team. So I think that has been really delightful to watch, though granted, like, so has everything.
Yeah. I mean, the instances where he just decides that, oh yeah, I'm going to prove right now that I'm stronger than the dude who's trying to guard me, and I'm just going to like barrel into him, and all of a sudden I'm standing underneath the basket and about to dunk it. Like, it's pretty rare to see that level of strength and like dexterity. I know he has his issues. Like, he's, I think he's turning it over on like 1 out of every 6 drives or isolations right now, which is not the best, but like, when they're at full health and they have Siakam and they have Fred, that's not something you're asking OG to do all that much anyway. And he kind of gets to move back into his peak offensive role, which is opportunist, which is, he benefits from all the gravity everyone else has everywhere. And he's such a good play finisher that it's a damn good spot to have him operating. He's just been amazing. I guess the last question on this, Katie, is, I think this season is largely about figuring out who are the guys for whatever the contention window is going to look like? How is it all going to work around Pascal and Scottie, who you figure are kind of the two that are penciled in to be, all right, these are going to be the stars of the team, no doubt, going forward. I would imagine Fred's also in that mix, but he's obviously a free agent, so TBD on that at the moment. For me, like, OG has clearly like made it clear, like, unless it's for an absolute superstar, you're not trading OG because he's so essential to how the team operates. And I guess the question is, like, do you think a team built with OG Anunoby as its like third best player, like, can he kind of hack it as the third best player on a team with championship odds? Obviously, all teams are made differently, different assemblages of players, blah 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 blah. But if you go to like the sort of peak end game version of what this team is, can you envision OG, the player he is now and might still become as he's just 25? Is he the kind of guy who you feel comfortable with as like your third option on a championship team?
Yes, I feel comfortable with that. And I will say every NBA season is always about figuring out who the guys are. I feel like that's our whole job sometimes.
Who are the guys?
Sometimes I wish it wasn't. I wish it was a little bit more broad, open-minded. But that
was the beauty of last year's Raptors team, where it's just like, who knows? Just roll with it, and it doesn't really matter. Let's just watch some weird hoop. And
we are in a constant cycle of like panicking and picking like who are the guys, not just for the Raptors. I mean, the league at large. Aside from that, yes, I do think so, because I also do feel there's something we haven't talked about yet, which is this sort of level of responsibility, and I think like showing that he's ready for it, and we've seen that from his teammates in terms of how they play, but also like the statements they just outright have made. Like I think of going back to media day, things that Pascal and Fred have said. But I do think there's a bit of a change in tone from OG too. And I think, you got to take someone at their word, and then they got to be able to back it up. And thus far he has. It's like a small sample size, but like, I think it's a pretty solid one going into this season. But you mentioned there's some things, of course there's room for improvement, like turnovers. That's a huge thing. Mm-hmm. That's such like a way to just effectively leak and lose all your momentum, right? Mm-hmm. And this is
as the Raptors are familiar with, being the one who sapped the joy from others.
Exactly. They're familiar with it, but they are also a team that are very, like this, they're very susceptible to momentum losses and not being able to get themselves out of the mud, and that happens. But I think so. I mean, he needs a strong contingent around him. I think it's a lot to ask anybody to sort of hold that on their shoulders and like be able to carry the team forward. But I think, as like your third superstar or like star option, I guess I'm getting ahead of myself if I say superstar, but is your third star option to lead the team? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and just to kind of reiterate, I think it's a different shape than most stars. Like he's not coming out and averaging a ton of points and all that stuff compared to what you typically expect. But I think the defensive contributions are so enormous and just like slapping you in the face whenever he's on the floor. It's like, oh yeah, this is star shit we're seeing. Yeah,
it's funny. Like when you made the Draymond Green comparison, right? Like you wouldn't, and like the strength comparison of like, you don't think of OG Anunoby as being that strong, but he is. It's just, Draymond for seasons and seasons and seasons. That's what his core identity has been. Mm-hmm. He's this huge, strong guy who's like going to go in, be a defensive menace, get rebounds, just like protect the paint. OG doesn't come across that way because he does those things a lot, as we said before, more like stealthily and quietly. It doesn't mean that he can't.
Sure. Yeah. OG Rocks, I think, has been the thesis point of this first segment. We're going to continue on and talk about someone who's not playing quite as well as OG right now, but is probably going to be fine, right? We'll talk about Scottie Barnes and the issues going on with him, the conversation around him in just 1 second. Before we do that, however, got to tell you about a new sponsor we have here, and that is Turo, which is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, UK, Canada, and soon coming to Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan, or for a family road trip. You can get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and you just need to get from A to B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you had your eye on as well to see if it fits into your everyday life. This is amazing. I just went on my honeymoon back in August, and renting a car was the most expensive thing we did. It was insane. I would have loved if Turo was an option for us out on Vancouver Island in the summer, and you should be checking them out right now. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. That's Turo.com. Today's show is also brought to you by our dear friends over at Built Bar. We love Built Bar, don't we? They're so delicious, and they have some brand new reimagined flavors for you to check out. They got the cookie dough topper, the coconut brownie bar, and the coconut brownie topper. They've also got white chocolate peppermint granola. It's Built's take on granola bars, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty. They got the candy cane brownie, Built Puffs. They're also fantastic. They're the marshmallowy, delicious treats. They got a wonderful lineup of stuff for you to check out. Lots of brand new flavors over on the Built.com website. They're revolutionizing nutrition as we know it with 100% real chocolate covering every bar, 17 grams of protein, and shockingly low sugar and calories. Just 130 calories in your standard bar. It's like half of what you're getting in your regular candy bar, and way less nutrition in that Mr. Big bar or something, whatever you're having as well. It's the wonderful thing where they've made it feel indulgent when it's not indulgent at all. Built, you gotta try this. Get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. That's the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. And we continue on here with your first listen of the day, Katie Heindl from Dime, hanging out for a Whatevs Wednesday. Let's talk Scottie Barnes, shall we, Katie? He has had himself a rough week or so. I made the point earlier this week. I don't think it's a coincidence that it coincides basically exactly with Pascal Siakam going out of the lineup, because Pascal makes life easier for everybody, but it's not looked all that awesome with Scottie. And I think weirdly, like, the vibes have been sort of the thing that have thrown me off, where he just like seems a little less engaged than usual and mostly a little less joyful than usual. The whole thing with Scottie Barnes is, man, does this guy ever love playing hoop? He's just happy and smiley and go lucky. And it's kind of been missing the last week or so here, Katie. You're the resident vibes expert, I think, really resident feelings correspondent on the podcast. Like, what's your read on what's going on with Scottie? Are you concerned at all about the sort of the on-court demeanor, stuff like that? I feel like the shooting touch, that stuff's going to come. It's obviously a work in progress. He's a second-year player. He's 21 years old. You know, this kid was born after the year 2000. He's got some stuff to work on. But, you know, it has been notably different, I think, the last week or so than we've ever really experienced with Scottie Barnes. What's your read on what's going on? Are you concerned? Are you just sort of chalking this up to second-year player in difficult situation with best player out? What's your read on the whole deal with Scottie?
Definitely more of the latter. No, I'm not all that concerned. I also think it's a fewfold. At the break, I just quickly went to go glance at his stats and was going to say exactly what you did. The drop off and pretty much everything, certainly like point production, even when you look at turnovers, like this all coincides with Pascal Siakam being out of the game, which shows you just how impactful Pascal Siakam is in the way that like Scottie Barnes plays it off of him, but also just like all those small things and the ways that he's able to organize the floor. I think Scottie Barnes has to shoulder a lot more with Pascal Siakam out, also with like Precious out, with Gary. Like there's a lot of guys out right now that he just knows how to play off of. Yeah. He's only had one season. That's who he knows how to like play basketball alongside. And like, that's the style of basketball he's learned. As far as like the joyful and the kind of smiley, happy-go-lucky thing, I almost get a little bit more worried about that. Not from him, from the expectation placed on him to be this like joy generator at all times that you could just like pull a cord and kind of rev up, because it's not realistic. Like I think a thing that when we look at the growth that he had in his first season, obviously that is a huge, maybe impossible thing for anybody to live up to. So like it's like a moving target in his second season. You know, some things will improve, some things will get worse before they get better. Like that's I think just the nature of growing pains and what you want to call a sophomore slump. I also think folded into that, he's going to be feeling a lot of different things because guys are out, because he's not playing as well, he's not getting the results he's used to. Maybe it's not, the game isn't as generative of joy, you know, or lightness as it has been for him. And that's fine too. I think where my concern is being like, oh, like, why isn't this guy happy anymore? Like, what does he have to be upset about? It's like, it doesn't mean that he's upset, but like, we shouldn't always expect this guy to have a smile on his face, because we've grown used to it. And it's been such an amazing thing to witness. And of course, like, I think everybody is very protective of it. You can't just make someone's personality that they're happy all the time. That's not good either. So I think it's a manifold thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't doubt that he'll come out of this stronger because, like, it sucks. You've just had a ton of new responsibilities that you're not used to placed on you. You're getting some criticism from your coach when Nick Nurse made the comment, I think last week or the week before, just that he wanted to see Scottie use more physicality, which was a bit surprising to me. I guess I see what he means in terms of like getting right up to the rim.
Yeah, because he can whenever he wants to, really.
He can whenever he wants to, but during that stretch, he was also shooting the lights out from outside. So it's kind of like, I guess you want both if you can get both from someone like that. But, he's facing that kind of stuff too. So I think all of it is coming at once. It's a lot for him to sort of wade through and just take day by day and also game by game. I don't think it is some big regression. It's just you're going to see little blips of regression in his game this season. That's sort of just the nature, I think, of being a young player, a second-year player, and a player with this many responsibilities off the bat.
Totally. And like we forget, like we saw little blips during the season last year as a rookie, like he's hitting the rookie wall. And then he burst through the wall and, kind of always one-upped himself after these little sort of down spells. And I would imagine the same thing's going to happen here. And have you ever worked in an office or something like that where like 3 people who you normally work with are off and like your office job gets less fun? It's not like
everything changes.
There's no good conversations in the lunchroom. No one's bringing in donuts. You have to do more work. You're staying longer hours.
Yeah,
exactly. And I really don't think it can be understated how important Pascal Siakam is to this team.
Yeah.
And in particular to like the joyful way with which the team plays. As much as it emanates from Scottie, it emanates from Pascal as well. And to not have that, and everything just gets a little bit harder. The half-court offense becomes a little bit more of a slog. You're seeing the ball not go in just a little bit more often. You're having these possessions that are kind of difficult, and I can imagine it could be grating. And Raptors fans are notoriously fickle. I don't think anyone who's like sane is thinking this is like the end of Scottie Barnes or anything like that. Thankfully, like I think my little echo chamber has been pretty staunch in the Scottie will be fine camp, and I think that's the correct way to look at this because again, he's 21 years old. These guys are. What were you at 21? I was a mess. Yeah. I'm still a mess, but it's a different kind of mess, I guess. I didn't even shower before today's podcast. I'm a mess, but it's to me, I don't see it being a long-term thing that's going to hang over Scottie Barnes. And I agree with you. It is kind of like this unfair burden of like, you have to meet this level of happiness, Scottie, otherwise this is not good. Look, I do think the happiness is tied to his good performance, right? Like I think those things are very much go hand in hand. When he's playing with joy and spirit, like that lends to fun no-look passes and just like eccentric happiness after big plays and stuff like that. And we haven't seen it the last little while, but again, it feels so tied to that exact moment Pascal Siakam slips on the floor in Dallas that like I just don't think it can be a coincidence. It's all together, and this is what basketball's about. It's a team sport. It's not one dude, and especially when you are missing Pascal, who is just the massive force in how everything runs on the team. I don't think you can expect anyone to kind of, be there to be like the next man up thing is fake. That's not a real thing. If next man up was a thing, then every team would be perfect and no one would ever suffer injuries because, the next man's up. He's going to just do what that guy did. No, you can't do that. Pascal's really good. You can't be the next man up if you're not Pascal Siakam. It's hard stuff. Let's focus on some maybe moments and little flourishes of positivity with Scottie Barnes here. Is there anything that's happened here over the last week that kind of gives you an inkling that, hey, maybe things are kind of turning around here? I have my own thoughts, and I think just like his general process has been pretty decent. But what's your read on Scottie the last couple of games here? Do you see maybe some flashes and inklings that he might be pulling himself out of this little slump?
Well, I actually think tonight's game will probably be a fairly good indicator. Like it's a good match. Like the Heat's always like a good, frustrating sometimes, but like a good measuring stick for the.
It gets
the
the sports rage juices flowing. That's for damn sure.
It does, and they are a very pressuring team. Like they do not let up, and I think something that I was thinking of when you were just kind of talking through that last bit is just that to be able to kind of like smile or feel kind of lightness through pressure takes a lot of maturity. So I think that maybe Scottie's not there yet makes a lot of sense, right? Like that's a big ask for anybody. Like it took Pascal Siakam till this season, I would say, to be able to do that, and to like make that kind of pressure more generative of his game. I think for me, like Scottie has always struck me as someone who's able to make adjustments fairly quickly. He doesn't usually go out and have like 3 games in a row where he's doing the same thing, quote, wrong.
He's a quick learner for sure.
Badly. There might be other things because it's like there's a lot going on in any given game, especially right now for him. But he makes those adjustments pretty quickly. So I think it's been heartening to see that. I think I don't like that Pascal is out, and I don't like the effect, obviously, it's having on the team. But in terms of being kind of more on the facilitating end, I also think that's it too. Like he's not going to bring it like record as many points because he's not getting opportunities to shoot as much, right? Like that's not where they're kind of putting him with all these guys out. So I think that's been pretty good. I'd be curious to see if he does more of that tonight in this game against the Heat. But I think in general, I enjoy watching him make these adjustments. I think it's just you got to be a little bit patient and not think like he's going to make an adjustment and then the next quarter come out and like all this stuff will be fixed, or even the next game, for that matter.
Yeah, and look, I think there's probably some ways the Raptors can help him go about it as well, right? Like I think they've been really just throwing him to the wolves against fast wings and guards lately, and it's just not working, right? Like the perimeter defense is not there, whether it's that the ankles are slowing him down or he's just not the most laterally quick defender in the world right now. I also think he's playing too overzealously and getting too, like, you don't need to be that far up on Jaden Ivey, my guy. He's really fast. That's his whole thing. Don't let him run by you. But like, I feel like with the personnel they have, even when injured, make OG that guy who's going to guard Jaden Ivey down the stretch. That's what OG kind of does. So as we just talked about off the top, he's really good at that type of thing. Have Scottie do the thing that he's been successful at so far this year, which is like help side rim defense and kind of being there to clean up messes. That's actually been a pretty solid part of his defensive repertoire this year. I feel like they can put him in better positions to succeed that way. Offensively, it's tough, right? It's kind of like the Pascal in Tampa thing where it's just like, all right, I'm going to drive and then there's going to be 4 bodies and then I got to figure it out from there. And he's pretty good at figuring it out, but it's not perfect just yet. And I think we saw some nice moments where, having Malachi Flynn out there kind of makes, there's an easy dump off for a dunk for Scottie or whatever. Having more ball handling and shooting on the floor certainly helps matters, but I think they can also change the way they're using him a little bit to better put him in the position to succeed. That said, maybe they're putting him in difficult situations as a developmental ploy, and hey, you got to do that too. I suppose it's early in the season. You're still a young team. It's all very, new.
Yeah, you truly never know. That's what I was thinking too. I was like, I agree with you. I don't think it's been the best usage for him, but I'm like, but maybe this is a trial by fire kind of situation.
100%. We never know. Nick Nurse, he's a foxy fellow. He's a foxy fellow.
There it is.
Sure. All right, we're going to continue on and move on from that. Come back on the other side. Talk about some of the guys who are getting a chance to play right now, who are maybe playing themselves into bigger roles down the line. We'll get to that in just 1 second. But first, got to tell you about our friends over at, hold on, I know who it is. It's BetOnline, baby. Sorry, I have to coordinate which graphic I'm bringing up on the screen. BetOnline is your #1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at betonline.net. The World Cup is starting like 5 days from now. And man, if you want to throw some scratch down on Team Canada getting through Group F or whatever you want to do, it's all there for you, and they're going to help you be the informed wager. They're going to give you the insight on the teams that might crash and burn Belgium, or the teams that are going to go all the way. The Netherlands, it's all right there. And they are the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, rounding up the show here with Katie Heindl, taking a look ahead now I kind of talked about this on yesterday's podcast, Katie, the idea that if there is a silver lining to be gleaned from this stretch of not having all their good players available, it's that guys are getting reps and run and might in some way figure into the plans down the line this season as a result. Is there someone who, maybe we can just go to the Detroit game or the last couple games, is there someone who's kind of caught your eye, Katie, as someone who's maybe making a case to be a bigger part of the plans after the Raptors get their cavalcade of injured guys back?
Dalano Banton.
All right. I like it. Obviously, he was really great against the Pistons. What are you liking about Banton's game?
The Pacers, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like 14 points, sure. You go on to have like 25 the next game, not so bad. But like 14 is also nothing to really scoff at, like when you need it. I think especially right now, his kind of like wily, explosive energy, not the worst thing to have when teams are also like, how are we gonna, okay, like maybe it's easy to game plan against this team. We know that XYZ guys are out. But then you've got this wild card, I think, in Banton, where it's like, okay, we don't know. No one knows how to game plan for that guy, right? I think he has looked a lot better in terms of slowing his game down, and not tripping himself up.
Sure.
I think his decision making has looked pretty good, and he just like still retains that sort of wild energy, chaotic energy, I would say. So I think that, he broke. I would say it is fair to say he broke the Pistons curse.
Yeah, I think so for sure. As I noted on Twitter on Tuesday night, just thinking back to how mad Delano Banton must have been when Dwayne Casey refused to double team LeBron James in Game 3 as he goes and hits the off-glass buzzer beater. Like that, like you think Dwayne Casey's out for revenge? Delano Banton's been seeking this revenge for 5 years now. I think for me, as much as I think Banton's been awesome, and I do think he'll be part of the plans, he's been part of the plans this season, maybe kind of against my wishes for the early part of the year where he wasn't doing a whole lot to be that effective. Very much changed the last few times out here, but I do kind of wonder if Malachi Flynn is maybe the more sort of like easy to insert into the mix guy, just because like he kind of does what they've been desperately needing from some sort of backup ball handler, which is just like settle things down, run the offense, and like don't have any funny business. And, they usually get that with Pascal and Fred kind of sharing off and staggering and stuff like that. And I don't think the need for a point guard has been nearly as high as it's been suggested to be over the last year or so. But I do think like the way Flynn's playing, that man is playing like the wonderful backup point guards of my youth, the Anthony Carters, the Derek Martins, the Monte Morrises of today, the beautiful backups who play long time in the NBA, don't make all that much money, but make enough and are just like they're like the thing you can count on. I'm kind of getting those vibes from Flynn the last little while here. The shot making's been a little bit better. He's hitting his threes. He seems to be just like overjoyed to have a big man to screen for him and Christian Coloco. They get to run pick and roll together. That's fun. And I feel like with Banton, like if the 3-point shooting's real, then that's a different conversation. I'm going to hold out judgment on if it's real just yet because we're still working on a pretty small sample here. But I think because Banton on the ball can be a little bit tricky. Even with the better decision making, he's a little bit more slithery, trying to get into the teeth of the defense. I still think there are some issues there in terms of just like not a ton of burst, getting around guys without an 80-foot run up and whatnot. And I think Flynn kind of is just like an easier guy to kind of plop into the mix and have him do effective, positive things with second units. But this is a good problem to have. Oh, the two backup point guards we thought might compete with each other are playing well. Whatever will we do? It's kind of one of them good problems. What are your thoughts on Flynn? Like, do you have any sort of read on him and the way he's played? Are you equally as bullish? And I should say, I never thought in a million years I would be bullish on Malachi Flynn becoming a reasonable part of the rotation down the line. Those were how low my my ambitions were for him coming into the season. But I think he's actually shown some tangible growth in the way he kind of conducts himself on offense. And he continues to try really hard on defense, which you have to be happy with too. What's your read on Flynn and his potential figuring into the future plans of the team?
Yeah, of course I'm happy for him. He's someone who I think I've long wanted to be able to say like, okay, he got a fair shake and then he made the most of that opportunity. It was like one or the other was kind of missing. I feel like some of the opportunities were just sort of like piecemeal. And I get it. You got to be ready for the minutes that you get handed sometimes. And I'm sure he doesn't, it's like a catch-22 because it's like he doesn't want these minutes because he doesn't want his teammates to be hurt. But I also think he stepped into them in a really meaningful way. I think I really like where he is like around the glass, like his rebounding. I don't know. Like, I think that's something that I wouldn't even necessarily expect from him, just like given his size and where
he's
he
grabbing and going.
plays.
It's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's been really cool to watch. Just like a general like fluidity and I think overall sense of the game around him. It doesn't look like he's kind of looking like, where should I be anymore? He like knows where he's going and he gets there. So I think he's been really good. The last guy I did want to also give a shout out to, because I feel like when he's steady, we just kind of forget about him, but he's also been like such a bright spot in these last few games as Chris Boucher. You know, and also it's just like, you're very lucky that you've got someone who can be that productive quietly and then like step up. Sometimes you know, there's errors, but like for the most part, I'd say it's been really nice to see him play so well alongside these other two guys we're shouting out to.
Yeah, absolutely. Boucher. I mean, I did a whole ode to Chris Boucher on yesterday's show.
Well, there you go. He my rocks. Bad.
No, it's okay.
Like,
it's nice
no
to get other.
Talking about Chris Boucher.
No, it's great
like,
to get other Chris Boucher talk as well.
Yeah.
With that, we're gonna round out today's show as the breaking news comes in. The Toronto Blue Jays have traded my favorite player on the Toronto Blue Jays, so I'm gonna go cry. Teoscar Hernandez is gone, and this makes me sad.
I don't know who that is. I'm sorry.
It's fine. You don't like baseball. It's cool. Whatever. We're gonna wrap it there, though. Thank you so much, Katie. Anything you'd like to promote for the good people out there before we get out of here?
Yeah, I interviewed Kalia Copper last night, WNBA MVP and former WNBA champ. So that'll be on Dime. She's doing some pretty cool stuff in her hometown of Philly, giving back to the community. And she told me a funny story about Candace Parker making fun of her because she says she's not strong. But yeah, that'll be on Dime.
People make fun of me for that all the time. We're going to wrap it there. You can find me on Twitter at Woodley Sean. Subscribe to Post Touches, my Substack newsletter. I should have a piece on OG coming out this week. I'm having a hard time, guys. The writer's block is real because I'm not good at writing like our friend Katie here. I pointed the wrong way on the screen.
You still get the block. So my best advice, Sean, you just have to sit down and get started, which sounds so rudimentary, but honestly, that's the hardest part sometimes.
Sounds so hard, Katie.
Just sit down and start writing some sentences and don't let yourself get distracted or stop.
It's not like I've not done this before. I used to be a highly proficient blogsman, but boy, it's gotten difficult on hard times here. Either way, we're going to round it there. You can subscribe, follow, rate, review, all that good stuff. We'll be back again tomorrow with Jamar Hines to talk about Raptors Heat, which should be a good time. Surely, hopefully they get some guys back. I was actually checking Twitter to see if there were any injury updates on the guys tonight when I found out this Teoscar Hernandez. Terrible news. So we're going to wrap it there. Bye, Teoscar. We love you. We'll talk to you Thursday. Bye-bye.